Then I was like, huh. She's like, I think this might be money laundering, son. Like, especially his English is really broken. I gained 50 pounds in 9 months.
50 pounds
Yeah.
in 9 months.
A lot of biscuits and gravy, and
They call that a dirty bulk, I think.
they call that a dirty bulk.
Is that how you were
Yeah. And then the only reason I knew she was Mormon is because when I was driving through Utah one time, I texted her and she says, "How are you doing?" And I say, "I'm in Utah and I just became a Mormon. It's great." And she's the most heartfelt message ever. "I'm so happy. Like, this is the best day ever." I was like, oh, it was sarcastic. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to like offend.
Welcome back to What Can We Get Into? This week we got Patrick Bell, the Patrick Bell. This is episode 3 of Infinity. I never thought I'd even get 3 in on this, honestly. This is a pipe dream that I've had, is doing a podcast. So, Patrick, welcome on. I'm happy to have you here. We met about a month ago, right?
Yeah.
Month and a half ago?
It might almost be 3 months, bro.
Has it been that long ago?
I feel like it's been 3 months.
You might be right.
It's almost November.
You're right. It was like
October,
July.
September. Yeah, it was like summertime. It was hot.
Okay.
It was a scorcher.
Then never mind. It's been 3 months. It's gone like that. So Patrick is a trainer. He's the founder of Kingdom Health. He's here in Dallas. And the reason I found you is because you're ATG certified. And that's kind of why I reached out to you. Your content drew me in and I was like, this guy's ATG certified. I love that. For people that don't know, that's basically a training program for the knee. I'll let you kind of explain that a little bit. But tell me about your path to becoming a trainer and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, dude. I originally wanted to design video games and be a marine biologist, and so neither of those came to be.
Really? Video games and marine biology.
Well, not mixed, but like it was a close race between the two, just depending on the year which one would lead it. I was never a natural athlete. The only real organized sports I did growing up was maybe 1 to 2 years of soccer, like in elementary school, and I just played video games instead. But we moved around a lot, so it just kind of interfered with like joining at the right start times as a kid with the school systems. And so I get to about 14 and I get to high school and I'm like, hey, I want to play football. And so, I joined football in freshman year, get absolutely smoked, demolished. I'm like the slowest, skinniest, and weakest kid on the field, so I ride the bench. I think I got one play all year, and it was when we were beating a team like 56-0.
What position were you?
Wide receiver and
you look like a wide receiver.
Outside linebacker. I could see that. So you just wait for the rest of the details. And so I rode the bench probably until my junior year. So I moved from California to Oregon to a smaller school, and still couldn't even make the starting team on the JV as a junior. But it was probably like halfway through my junior year where I actually got like some time to play. But in my junior year, what happened was they needed somebody extra to play in practice, a defensive end. And so I went over to defensive end from like linebacker or safety. I was always switching between like DB and linebacker, and got on the defensive line. I was like, oh, I don't have to catch anything.
Wow.
These hands that are made of bricks, like don't have to grab anything. Like I can, this is kind of fun. I just get to hit people. And so, went to the defensive end. Eventually they moved me from like, on the offense, I was wide receiver and then tight end, and then actually moved to right tackle. And so going into my senior year, I gained 50 pounds in 9 months.
50 pounds in 9 months.
A lot of biscuits and gravy. And
they call that a dirty bulk, I think.
They call that a dirty bulk,
Is that how you were doing it?
Yeah, Hungry Man's at night. So I remember my mom would get 2 Hungry Man's for me at dinner, not just one. So one of them was 780 calories. And so 2 was a solid like 17 or 1560. And so I was like, that's about the size of a bulking dinner.
Yeah.
And then I would top that off with like a peanut butter and whole milk protein shake. And then lunch or breakfast was biscuits and gravy for like $3 over at the cafe across from the school, man. And so
you gained 50 pounds in a couple of months.
155 to 205.
Jeez.
And so went from essentially riding the bench to becoming a starter, team captain on both sides, like just really kind of more so starting to begin to find identity. Like it felt like for the first time in my life, I'd stepped off of the sidelines of my own life and got into the playing field of my own life. It's almost like if somebody was watching a movie, it felt like my life was always going by me. And I think definitely playing video games, you're used to always seeing things from the other side of the screen versus being inside of it.
Like a third person. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was the first time I felt like, oh, I'm actually contributing to society or myself or my dreams. And it was cool, man. And plus you get jacked, you start getting girls who look at you, you know, people say, hey, you want to come hang out, like smoke some weed? Like, well, you know, you're cool now. And so it completely shifted a lot of, like I didn't really have a lot of friends before that. You know, they were all online. I had great friends growing up online, like through Xbox, still to this day, good friends. But in person, I was kind of lonely. And so that like was an in for me with the football team, with other people, just started to be able to even train people in high school. And from there, I said I wanted to be a physical therapist. And then I got into my freshman year of college, which was my only year of college. And I got into some of the classes and I was like, this doesn't really strike my itch the way that I thought it would. And I'd always been like, you know, an A student, honor roll, AP, all this stuff. But when I got into college, it was just like it kind of felt a little bit redundant. And I got an internship after my freshman year with a company called Pro Plus Fitness, which was contracted into Anytime Fitnesses as a separate entity. And you know, got introduced to a mentor who taught me a lot of really great things. His name was Demarius Holland. And essentially within like 4 weeks, he's giving me books and I'm learning on the field way faster than I did in a year in school. And I don't have to do the general studies. I can just go right into the thick of it. And so at 19, I became a trainer, and it's been about a decade now.
Was your internship as a trainer, or were you helping out? What were you doing as an intern?
Yeah. I was shadowing him in his sessions. That was a pretty quick process. It was like 2 or 3 weeks of shadowing and then transitioning over to take over the clients. And then obviously the, you know, mentorship and him shadowing me, you know, continued for quite a few months after that.
And that was, you were 19?
19.
How old are you now?
Yeah, I am about to turn 28.
28. So it's basically a decade ago.
Yeah.
So you got into training, you started at this gym, more of a commercial gym, right? Nowadays, you're more doing some online training. You're doing some private clients, obviously, part of your own business. Yeah. What did the last decade look like going from the big box gym to more of a training your own clients and starting the online personal training? Yeah.
Do you want the 15-minute version or the like 5-minute version?
Whatever you feel is fit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll see if I can find a mix or maybe all of it.
Because that's a lot of what I want to do on this podcast is go over not only health and fitness but entrepreneurship. And I think that the 3 people that I've had on so far, you being the third, we got a gym owner, we got a private practice chiropractor, and we've got you as kind of another, you know, entrepreneur in the fitness space. So I think that that's one thing that I've been really, in the past year, have really been, you know, in the weeds with is owning my own business. So if you want to go closer to the 15-minute, I've got time for you.
Yeah, so that first internship turned into about 11 months working at a commercial gym. Phenomenal. I got to learn what it was like to actually have somebody hands-on teach you something, which, you know, hearing a little bit about your story, you got the blessing of, and so you can understand how it's just really valuable to have somebody who's, you know, got so much experience under their belt to actually show you some things.
Gives you a leg up. I mean,
it gives you a leg
whether
up,
you want to believe it or not.
He was having me read, you know, almost like a book a week, and these are like textbooks, like The Supple Leopard, Easy Strength, Starting Strength, like
Kelly Starrett.
Yeah, exactly. Like my first ever fitness book that I ever read in my whole life was front to cover Supple Leopard.
Have you met Kelly before?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, I've met him out in Vegas.
Love it.
Because I don't know if he's a PT or a chiro. He's kind of obviously.
I think he's more of a PT.
Is he more of a PT?
Yeah, I've never heard him about manipulating the spine.
He may not be, but I know that he is well thought after within both spaces, just because of that book. And I met him last year out in Vegas, but fantastic.
It's a great concept too, like being able to can do anything, you know, like go sprint without having to warm up. like we'd all wish for that. Right?
Anytime I think about whether it's diet, whether it's movement, whether it's, anything, I look back to 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago as a human being. Mm-hmm. If you were being chased by something and had to get away, you should be able to do these things to survive.
Yeah.
Where I think if you took 2/3 of the population right now, by the way, 2/3 of the population is overweight, 1/3 being obese, and those are probably 5-year-old stats. If we were in a predatory world, you'd be screwed.
Wow. And is that just for the U.S. population?
It's just for the U.S. population. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I saw that overweight number creeping to 70%.
That's insane, man.
And down in the southeast states, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi,
we're contributing.
You are definitely in the 70%. But
yeah.
Anyways, back to your story about training.
No worries, man.
which is probably a good stepping stone here. 70%.
Yeah, here
of
now
people
we're selling some training.
Need your
here.
services. Probably 100%. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I spent about 11 months there. It was phenomenal. Got to learn a lot. The only itch there was a few things. I'd had like some ideas for different things that I personally wanted to run, such as boot camps and different things outside the gym that I was kind of in my young mind pigeonholed with, and also realizing that people were paying, let's say. I was doing half-hour sessions then in a small town in Oregon for like $35 to $50 a session, so roughly $70 to $100 an hour, and I was getting paid $750 per session. I didn't read the fine print when I learned it. He gave a base salary of like $1,000, and then you get your commissions and all that on top. So
I was training about 60 to 80 hours a week.
Not too bad, with like a client load of 20, averaging twice a week with those people. What is that? Like about 20 hours of training or so. But people don't realize you're also in the gym all day long. You're programming too. And you're, getting in your own work. There's like just a lot of piece. You're in the gym for a long time. It was, 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. most days. And I'd also just gotten arrested for the first time for underage drinking.
Wow.
So my license was also taken away. And I was having to, that was around that time. And so my license was revoked, and I was essentially having to take a bus like to and from a city 15 miles away at the time.
Now, were you in Texas this time?
No, I was in Oregon. I was up in Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, I was up in Oregon. But I was with them for about 11 months, and obviously by my arrest story being the first one of underage drinking at 19, there's more to it than that. But I left the company after about 11 months to essentially run my own thing because I felt like I was pigeonholed and not able to do everything that I wanted to inside of it. And looking back, it was a really immature thing to do. I left clients just hanging, and contractually I couldn't touch them for 12 months because my mentor was very tight with his paperwork, and so I couldn't touch these people, couldn't help them. They now had to be transitioned to somebody new who they didn't even know very well, and everyone signed into 12-month contracts too. And so it's like, looking back, it was very dumb because also these boot camps I wanted to start and do completely flopped and nobody joined. And so I'm sitting there, for about 2 months or so, like, okay, what do I do? I'm living at my parents' house. I really don't have any money anymore. And then I moved to a second gym, still in that same town, that's essentially across the way. It's the other good gym in the town. There's 2 of them. And I begin as an independent contractor for the first time at a gym there. And so there I was able to, essentially that was when I became an entrepreneur, was running my own business there, seeing what I was doing. And a lot of it I copied over from the previous gym. Just like his methods, like his, setup for packaging, prices, all of that. And it worked really well. About a year later into that, I'm still in Oregon at the time. I get an offer from that previous company who I'd been able to repair relationships with, and they were still scouting me too because I'm good at what I do. And while still being very immature at that age, of course, but they wanted me to come in and support at some capacity. And so they wanted me to essentially like manage and train out of a couple new gyms up in the Portland area, which would be getting me closer to the big city. I'm in a small town. The pay would be better, all of that. And so essentially what I do is after about that second year, I do the exact same thing and make the exact same mistake, which looking back on it, my heart hurts on it, but cut off these clients and say, hey, I know we've talked about doing work with each other for a long time, but I've got a bigger opportunity up in Portland. They're going to be paying me better. It's essentially a new step. And I had a life coach at the time who was Mormon. And the only reason I knew she was Mormon is because when I was driving through Utah one time, I text her and she says, how are you doing? And I say, I'm in Utah and I just became a Mormon. It's great. And she's the most heartfelt message ever. I'm so happy. Like, this is the best day ever. I was like, oh, it was sarcastic. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend or be rude. But she was a sweet woman. And she said at this point in time, she was the first coach I ever hired. It was like $100 a month. It was like a special deal because I was so young. She said, have you actually looked at these gyms you're going to be moving to? And I say, no, I haven't. I just accepted it. And she's like, why don't you just go up there and see? I'm like, that's a great idea. And so I go up there and man, when I step into those gyms, my soul just like hurt. Like, you just walk in and it's just dusk and dark and like depressing and gloomy. And it's like, I don't know if you ever walked in somewhere where you felt like you would be one of the only lights in the room.
Sure.
And there would be nothing feeding you.
Why do you feel like it was like that? Is that the vibe they were going for? Like a warehouse feel?
No,
or just it's not taken care of, or the people that are
energetically, man. Like just something in the room. Like I never met the owners or anybody who even worked there. I just stepped into the room and I'm a big feeler. And so I just stepped in and I was like, oh, this is bad juju,
Sure.
And I was like, oh, I made a really bad decision here. But essentially what happened is earlier that year, I helped move my mom and the rest of my family down to Texas. This is where we're originally from. I was born in Grand Prairie, but left when I was 6. And we found our way in Oregon, and so I decided, I've already told all my clients that I'm leaving Oregon, or I'm leaving to go to Portland, but I hate Portland. So JK, I'm going to Texas now and starting my life anew. So I was back in 2018.
That's hard for your business because it's such a personal business. I mean, it is. You really strive on relationships, repeat clients. If not, you don't even really have a business. And that's the business I'm in. I mean, it's really a repeat customer business to where if you pick up and move like I just did, a funny story. I had one person that I saw in Kentucky came in about 2 months ago, and it was such a weird experience, but she just happened to move down here, found out I was here, and was driving quite a bit. But anyways, it is hard to go change, even if you're changing 30 minutes, because people aren't going to drive 30 plus minutes to go train a few times a week. So you're basically starting over each time you do this.
Yeah, it's like people won't go more than 15 to 20 minutes for a gym.
Do you find that to be true in DFW?
If you want consistent people that you see every week, yes. If, like, how I work now with a lot of the knees over toes stuff is more project based. And so I've got some people who are lifers and other people who are like, hey, let's do 6 months. Let's throw the whole kitchen sink at it and let's get you feeling the best you can. Like, we're training 3-4 times a week. And in that case, it's like, I hope you're done after 6 months. Like, if you're not, we didn't really do what we wanted to do. Obviously, you still need to continue these practices, but at the end of the day, I'm not really here to hold your hand for the rest of your life. I'm here to be in your corner as a friend, but at a certain point, I got to let you walk on your own. So for projects, people are willing. I got people who drive from Arlington, from Frisco, which are like 25, 35, 45-minute drives, 50 to 60 minutes, with traffic. But your lifers, and your consistent people who are going to stay with you for a few years, those, 15, 20 minutes.
So you get back to Texas. How did you get to where you are now? How long have you been back in Texas?
6 years now.
Okay.
6.5 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I get to Texas and I move in on my mom's couch. And the second I get down here, on that road trip, my Isuzu Rodeo, my vehicle at the time, breaks down. Isuzu Rodeo, man, classic.
Wow.
And it breaks down on me. I don't have the money to fix it. I'm pretty broke at the time. And I'm really depressed, dude. At that point in time, I'm like, man, I'm sleeping on my mom's couch. I'm really she's about to move to Mineola, Texas, which is very far out towards Tyler.
I never even heard of that.
It's out towards Tyler, so like in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
There's no personal training market out there. Like I was living in Mesquite with her at the time. And so I'm just kind of like going through all these things. And at a certain point, and this is important because this is where the online side comes in, but I'm really depressed after an interview at a Fitness Connection in Texas, because it just felt so salesy. I was like, I don't really want to be a part of like that corporate environment anymore.
Right.
And I am just depressed. Go to the smoothie shop. They gave me a free coupon at the gym, and I'm just like sorting through my apps on my phone, and I open up Square. And so I'd only really used Square like once or twice a year beforehand to essentially get caught in a money laundering scheme when I first started my fitness business. And so what it was is someone like had emailed me, and I'm like 19, 20, right? And they're like, hey, I want to buy your biggest package you have for my daughters. At the time, it was like $900 a month. It's like 2 daughters. Okay, it's $1,800. He's like, all right, cool. Here's my credit card information. I'm like, sweet. I'm walking around the house, probably in my boxers, like, Mom, I just made $2,000. Talk about entrepreneurship. Like, yeah, that was good. And she's like, okay, cool. But like, how did that happen? I'd share the story. She's like, can I read his emails? It's a little broken English. Like, he never really, like, he said he was going to have his daughters delivered via private driver, like just different pieces like that. And then I was like, she's like, I think this might be money laundering, son. Like, especially his English is really broken. And he was so quick to give you money. And she's like, we should go to the bank. Sure enough, we go to the bank. It's like, yeah, this is definitely money laundering. What's super common in these situations is these people will like charge on credit. And then essentially it's now in your bank account, and then it's real cash. And then they get they pull it back into theirs, turning their credit into cash. Is essentially what I was told at the time is what they do on this by getting a refund. And so my bank told me, all right, the money's in my bank account. We're going to take this out. Don't spend any of it. Lesson learned, no harm, no foul. You didn't spend anything. So a year later, I hadn't used Stripe because I joined at that independent contractor gym that required you to run through their payment processor to process payments there so they could take their cut. And I open up Square, and there is $1,736 sitting in there. I know that because it's 3% off of the $1,800. Square took their percentage, right? Like, how did this end up here? I don't know if you're familiar with payment processors. When it goes from person to payment processor to bank account, there's no going back.
Traditionally, no.
There's no going back into the payment processor. And so the money was completely removed from my bank account. But essentially, there was this magic money that had somehow come back into my Square account, and again, by all logical ways, this money was not supposed to be there. It's usually with payment processors a one-way tunnel that only directs traffic out of the into and out of the payment processor, never back in. There's, to my knowledge, none that have a way back in.
The good news is you're out of the statute of limitations. So if anybody from Stripe is hearing this, you're good on the 1800.
This is 7 years later now almost. I was scared to talk about it for a while too because of that. But this money now appears in my account, and I'm like, logical thing to do would be to go get my car repaired and maybe put a down payment on an apartment because, my mom's about to leave the city. Instead, I decided to put a down payment on a $6,000 coaching program that would help me start my online coaching business that I had found beforehand. And because of all of the other situations in life, and I was also moving into a relative's house to go sleep on their couch, my car is broken down, had to sell that for pieces. I was very depressed and bombed the program, completely failed, wasn't able to make the other $4,000 of payments in there, and essentially got very depressed and said, well, I guess I'll just be a personal trainer and never go online. So I get a job at a 24-hour in Mesquite, managing and training out of there, and essentially go about my life for about 6 months or so, and then save up some money, get ready to, move out, get a vehicle, do my whole thing there. And what happened was somebody that I had met in that program who was really successful ended up becoming a business coach, which is really common in this field. It's like you've learned how to make money, so now you learn you can make more money by charging $6,000 for a business coaching program versus like $2,000 for training. And so a lot of people will end up going that route. This guy's name was Hakeem White, and he had a program where he was teaching personal trainers how to start their online business. So very niche. It wasn't like become successful online, but it was start. like how do you make that first initial step?
Which a lot of times is the hardest part.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
Just jumping in, and some of the times you can just figure out the rest once you get the wheels rolling.
Yeah, exactly. And so he did a good job niching on that. And so again, I could have gotten a vehicle. I was looking at an apartment at the time. And so strike number 2, I put all of my money that I had at that point in time into the payment for his program. And my relatives, like I tell my sister at one point, she's like, Patrick, you're so stupid. Like I was living with her at the time. She's like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, this and that. And come to find out it worked. I put like $1,500, I think, into the program and got $2,000 profit in the first month from it. And this program is also where I met my wife, Sammy, which is really cool. And so that magic money, from failing the first one in this money laundering scheme also from it, it's all crazy how it all comes back in. And I get to this place now to where it works. And again, very immature. I'm like, hey, I just made $2,000 online in a month. That's how much I make in a gym in 1 month. I don't want to be in the gym anymore. Deuces, guys. I'm leaving. I'm going full-time online. In hindsight's 2020 on this, but essentially spend the next 6 months barely cracking $500 a month. Again, living on a relative's couch.
And what's the time frame on this that we're at now?
Like in terms of years into the
how far back are you talking where you started the online program?
Yeah. That was 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, so 6 years ago.
Sure.
And 6 years ago, almost 5 years or 7 years ago. And I'm struggling for like 6 months. I just met the woman who's going to become my wife. She is making, nearly 6 figures herself, being very successful at what she does. She's over at Equinox. She's working a couple side jobs. She's also doing the online training. Where I made $10,000 that month, she made almost like $2,000. She made almost $10,000 that month, cracking through and getting into everything. And so essentially the first 6 months, man, I kind of look at it as like God was really walking me through this season of like, can you actually stick with this even if no money is showing up? Like, is this actually what you want to do? But in that time, I had recently become a Christian, probably like 4 or 5 months beforehand, and my 2 favorite things had become Jesus and fitness. And so I wanted to create a space to where I could talk about both of those. And so essentially what I was doing inside my online community was creating this space to where what would become Kingdom Health a few years later began to happen. And so I would start to specifically niche myself down into working with Christian fathers, husbands, and entrepreneurs, helping them to lose weight and get stronger. And that worked for a little bit, but it wasn't enough, obviously, to build like a real sustainable business off of. And so, did lots of side jobs, like did roofing for a little bit, sold solar for a little bit, worked at Amazon warehouse for some time, then at Home Depot for a little bit. The last side job that I'd had was bartending and waiting tables at a fine dining restaurant over in Highland Park, University Park area. And so that was all over the span of like 6 years or so, just different pieces in that. But essentially about a year, 12 months or so goes by. I also become a youth pastor at this time. And I'm juggling like 3 hats, making almost no money at all of them. But I just stick with it, and I say, hey man, like I want to talk about Jesus and I want to talk about fitness and I want a space where I can do both of those. I'm just going to like hang out here. And so I hung out in it for about a year or two, ended up getting a job at Equinox. So we're in like 2019, then going into 2020, get a job at Equinox at the beginning of 2020. Really good gym. Got a lot of great education from there. It teaches you how to charge a higher price point for your training. This is where my wife trained for 6 years before we had met. And it just really, it gave me a realization, there's people who want to pay, $10,000 for coaching.
For people that don't know Equinox, is there a gym within reason that's not some one-off franchise, I'll say, that is more expensive or more elite than Equinox? No. I've always looked at it as I think Lifetime is trying to rebrand.
Lifetime's like there, but Lifetime
they
also,
never used to be. This is a new rebrand for them, and I'm all about it. But Equinox is always.
They hang out in that like, it's like you have the people who drink Patron and then you have the people who drink like Class Azul. You know what I mean? It's like Class Azul is just a little bit more, right? And then like Patron's like right there with it, but it's, not as bougie, I would say. And I'm also not a tequila guy, so I could be totally off. That's just how I view it.
That's all right.
Are you a tequila guy?
A little bit.
A little bit?
You were
Okay.
close on
am
that,
I off completely?
No.
No, okay,
close.
okay.
Patron is a nice upgrade. Clase Azul is, I mean, you wouldn't want to order Clase Azul at a restaurant because you'll be,
yeah,
it'll probably be more than your food
it.
costs.
Yeah, it's $50 for a margarita.
There
and
you
there's
go.
people who are pumping them out, man.
So Equinox was always something that I kind of had that on my bucket list.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be successful enough to train at Equinox. This was when I was young, and I was
Right.
I want to do this, and I want to have this car, and I want to be at Equinox. I always thought that was so cool. And now that I'm a little bit older and wiser, now I'm 30. It's not as much of a bucket list. I think it was more of a status thing, because those are quite honestly social clubs. It's basically like a country club.
It's essentially that.
Like a social club type of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Equinox. You feel like Equinox got you into training those people? Do you feel like that helped you in certain circles with? Because you gotta have a decent amount of money to train at Equinox.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily I formed a lot of lifelong relationships with some of the trainers there and the people on staff, but I didn't necessarily. It's not like I still talk with a lot of the people that I did train there when I was there. So I was there for about 5 months, because we all know what happened in 2020. I started in January, March hit, and everything shut down. And so Equinox was amazing, though. Equinox continued to pay us very close to, if not our full rates, through March, April, and then we came back in May. And I get married at this time too. I got married in May of or in March of 2020. So we got married in the shutdowns, because our original wedding.
You got married in March of 2020.
Yeah, so we were originally going to get married in May, but the place we were going to get married at got shut down, and not shut down like they went out of business. And it was a place that had been there for years and years and years, and so we were like, hey, we might as well just go do this thing. And so we got married in 2020. But I left Equinox in May. Because when we came back, it was more of, in my opinion, your job was cleaning. And so they were requiring a lot of the trainers to almost double their time there. And you were more cleaning staff along with training, which obviously as a trainer, you clean up after yourself where you go. But it was when you're not training people, you now have to get an hourly wage and clean everything.
Are you still doing all your online stuff at this time?
I am, yeah. And it's steadily growing. And so.
Did COVID really soar it? Did it shoot it?
Yeah.
So because people couldn't go to gyms, you couldn't get your hands on fitness equipment. I went on Amazon and tried to get a 35-pound kettlebell, and
Gone.
It was if you could get one, it was 10 times the price of what it should be.
Yeah. It was crazy, man. And so, yeah, then COVID hit in April of 2020 is around the time when I founded Kingdom Health. I ran I ran a program I called the Prayer Walker Challenge, which we do every year. And that made my first larger lump sum of money. And I was like, wow, this is great. And so that was, again, partly why in May I left Equinox too. And so you'll see this trend a lot of times of starting and stopping at different places. And if I could really go back and just speak to a younger version of myself, it would be lay down roots and grow what you're growing at a more patient pace. There was always this, I saw one piece of fruit, so now I'm going to pull the entire plant out of its soil and try to reroot somewhere else, rather than let the nourishment, let the lessons, just be patient with it. And so I leave again. Online business does okay at that point in time, but again, never really anything to give financial security to my family. And still staying in that niche, working with Christian men, and it was probably around that time. So 2020, I go in and I start, we stay online for a while, and it's it's okay, but it's not working. 2021, I begin to basically say, all right, this is not working, doing it all online. Because I was struggling to make $2,000 to $4,000 a month, each month. And in Dallas, it's not really a livable wage. You think about everything else that goes into running a business too, expenses, taxes, all of it. And it just wasn't working. My wife running her business at the same time. So we're barely scraping by in a 1-bedroom apartment in Dallas. And essentially about 2021, I'm all right, I need to get another job. And so I start working at Amazon, and doing that full time. And that was the first time it really got me to think, I'd been so neck deep in getting the business to work that was really actually neck deep in trying to get me to work. And I never had the space with Amazon and getting a side job there to just pay my bills, right? Get a base salary that I could do and like disassociate from what I was doing allowed me to do is actually look at my business and say, oh, you're not me. Like now that I'm making enough money for my house's bills to be going, I can actually look at my business as, does it even fuel itself? Does it pay for its monthly needs? You know, is a profit and loss even like working there? Because everything was so intermingled, family and business together for so long. And so that was when a lot of growth started to at least begin around that time. And so that was probably 2020-ish is when I started to discover the knees over toes stuff.
And that was kind of my next discussion for you. Is how did you get into knees over toes? That's how I found you. Obviously, I mentioned that when we started, is the knees over toes stuff I find to be fascinating. I almost thought it was too good to be true when I first saw it.
Yeah.
It was early 21 when I was getting ads from Ben and him doing the dunks and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of fitness guys that are join this program. Oh, you do these workouts? Well, that's so old school. Oh, you do keto? That's so old. So it's like everybody's trying to get ahead and claim their niche. So I kind of always question these things as, okay, like what's different about this?
Right.
As a chiropractor, I know that we are trained really well with the spine and we're trained with extremities, but it's definitely more of like a back burner type of thing. And I remember my goal for you know, when I was getting into practice was like, I want to get really good at extremities. So when I saw this, I was like, well, maybe this is a good knee program. There's people that come in all the time with knee pain. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is something I can advise to them. So I took 60 days and I bought the program and I did the whole, you know, what does he call the foundations?
Zero program.
Zero.
Yeah.
Me and Corey were talking about that. And I was like, I don't really have knee problems. For me personally, I have two sisters that have both had ACL surgeries. Mm-hmm. So I know that there is some instability just in my genetics, right? I don't think genetics I think people play up genetics to be everything in health, whether it's, you know, the obesity rates or diabetes, or even people that see me think that disc issues or arthritis is genetic, and it's actually not. Is it a piece of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the best analogy I've ever heard is, you know, genetics are the gun, but you will pull that trigger by lifestyle, right? Yeah. And I think that's a great analogy. Anyways, back to ATG. I was like, you know, I think this would be a good idea to kind of do this. Anything that I recommend to patients, most likely I'm going to try it myself, whether it's a certain technique, whether it's a diet, whether it's a training for. So I was like, I want to do this so people go, well, what is this walking backwards stuff? Is this even legit? So I do it within reason. When I say within reason, I was doing this in like a modified yoga studio and occasionally at a CrossFit gym. Some of the stuff that Ben was suggesting, I didn't have access to. And I know it's pretty little equipment, but in terms of like sled pulls and stuff like that, I didn't really have access to that. So I would do a little bit of backwards walking, but tibialis raises, split squats and all that. 60 days go by and I'm like running with the dog outside and I'm like, man, I feel more confident running on unstable ground.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that, like going up and down stairs. I'm in my 20s, you know, I don't think about it. I don't have pain with it, but just driving my knee over toe with running, walking, stairs, just felt more stable. Didn't have any pain, had more stability. I'm like, this is kind of cool. So I really dove into researching him and getting his philosophy on how, and I loved it. It was like, if you really think about any joint, the shape of it tells you everything you need to know. If it's a hinge joint, it should hinge. I think philosophy from 20 years ago shows that don't load the knees. Loading the knees is bad. If that was true, then every marathon runner would have horrible arthritis in their knees, and it's not the case, right? They're loading their knees for 26.2 miles. They would have terrible arthritis. And it's kind of crazy to me. Sometimes patients come in and I'm like, I'll recommend some of these knees over toes things. They're like, but I don't, am I supposed to bend my knee?
Can it go over the toe? Is that
it's
illegal?
A hinge joint, and I'm sure you being in fitness and you're around my age, you probably weren't as indoctrined into the knees never go into toes. But I think
I definitely was after my I've had double knee surgery.
So you've had double knee surgery.
That was taught.
So it's definitely, it was a taught thing to the trainers and even doctors to rehabbing a knee is don't drive that knee over the toe and don't quote unquote load your knee. And I think that if you apply that to other joints, you would be like, this doesn't make any sense, right?
Well, it's the same thing with the lower back. People are scared to round it.
Yeah. And I think that in school, you learn, for me as a chiropractor, you see a lot of people get injured in these positions.
Yeah.
So you will be quick to assume, don't do that. However, people are injuring themselves because they're weak in that position.
Yeah.
Not because it's a bad position for the spine. The spine should have very flexible forward, backward, side to side, and depending on where you're at in the spine, rotation. And we just are weak, or in the muscles around it and the connective tissue around it to where. But yeah, getting back to your point, I was intrigued in ATG. I would say I implement it, within my training now. It's a supplement. And when I spoke with Corey, the owner of Industrious Frisco, because he's as well a ATG coach, he was telling. Have you heard his story?
A little bit, but
so his story is basically he was working at owned the CrossFit gym, had knee pain on a run. He's like, man, let's get into this ATG thing. So he tries it out for, he said 60 days, doing it like once a week. And he's like, man, this shit sucks. Like, I'm not doing this. And then he's like, he had to look in the mirror and be like, I have to do this. Like, I have to do this, not just once a week. So he talked about just going all in with it and really seeing the results. So that's how I met you. Is I saw that you were an ATG trainer, and I reached out to you. You obviously, you're a level 2 coach.
Level 2, yeah.
Is that the highest you can go?
No, there's a level 3 now that they're opening up the doors for beforehand. It used to just be like, essentially, there's like 3 of them. They were all like directors of education and different pieces there. But now there's 3 total levels for the average person.
So you've met Ben personally?
Yeah.
What is Ben like in person? Because I find it fascinating the way he does content where he's literally doing, you can hear him like breathing hard. And he's literally, go to the splits, go to an ATG split squat, and it's just like, I think it's so cool. I'm entertained by watching this stuff. Yeah. What is he like in person?
Same guy, man.
Same guy?
Yeah, he's always got his kids with him. His wife is there. He's could care less how he looks or like what's going on there. His brain is literally thinking about split squats, how to make a good video, and steak, avocado, and fruit. Like,
I love the diet too. Are you a fan of? Do you know who Paul Saladino is?
Yeah.
Carnivore MD is kind of what he used to go by, but I think that the way that Paul thinks about food is how Ben thinks about the body, and I think it's very ancestral, and I think that's how things should be done. If you look back, did we have access to these foods and these oils and all of this stuff? No.
Yeah.
So should we be putting it in our bodies? Probably not.
Right.
What kind of success stories have you seen with ATG? I mean, are they all success stories? Ben makes it seem like, you're going to have like 1 in 1,000 that doesn't get better from this. What's your experience?
For the most part, I got certified in 2022, and they started sending me clients essentially right after that, because I was right around when Joe Rogan happened. And so for the past 2 years, almost 3 years, they've just been sending people my way through like the map, kind of like how you found me. And really everybody who has consistently put in the work has seen a lot of benefit. I have one person who comes to mind who didn't receive the benefit that we'd initially thought. However, when this person had come into training, they had suffered a really terrible accident as a child that left them with like a permanent injury. And I don't know if you've ever had somebody who comes into your office who it almost feels like they don't believe that they can get fixed the second that they enter. And it's like their mind is controlling their body.
So I was just speaking to a patient about this morning in my private practice. And there is different types of pain in psychology with this. What you're referring to is called psychosomatic.
Yeah.
If you walk in or if you have a client that walks in and you think, oh, they're 100 pounds overweight, I don't think they're gonna put in the work that I tell them to. And you have that body language and you portray that to them and they can sense that. The psychosomaticness of that, the psychology, they're going to believe that, right? So, and people can do that to themselves. So exactly what you're saying, yeah, I see it. It's not common, but if somebody comes in and they don't think that you can help them, you're not going to help them.
Yeah, I think back just over the past like few years, I've definitely been able to implement this with, at least over 100 people, maybe close to 200 in the past like 2 years, including one-on-ones, groups, online, all of that stuff. And I really only have 2 people who come to mind that it quote unquote didn't work out for the best. But with those 2 people, they either came in and they were so skeptical from the beginning and like it's like they almost, even as they're handing over the money to sign up, they're like, I'm doing this, but I don't think it's going to work in a way. And so I think that kind of poisoned the results from the beginning. But everybody who has come in and said, hey, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm at least going to give it a shot, and coming in with an open mindset,
yeah.
I really haven't seen it disappoint anybody. And it may not work on the first try. It's like you may do a split squat and your knee hurts so bad that like it's like, see, I can't do it. Like split squat hurts. It's like, okay, cool. Like let it rest a little bit, but let's come back and let's try to stretch your calf. Let's try to do like backwards walking. Let's try to do a step up. Let's try to do, back extensions to where we can actually stretch out your hamstring, but your knee doesn't have to bend, but we're still strengthening all the structures around the knee to benefit it in a way. And they're like, oh, okay, this felt better. And then it's like, okay, let's just stretch your calf, just do backwards walking, just do step ups, and just do back extensions. Like the biggest you bend your knee on that is like 2 inches on the step up. But try that for 4 weeks.
Are you talking like a box step up?
Like a Poliquin step up,
so
Patrick step
more
up.
of a Patrick, okay.
Yeah, Patrick
step up. Is there a difference
between
Poliquin and Patrick?
Yeah, so how it goes is there's 3 different step up variations in the ATG system. All of them, their names change based off of the elevation or lack of elevation of the heel. So a Patrick step up is flat ground. So that would be like we're on the floor right here and we're bending, boop, boop, boop. Poliquin step up is when you have a heel wedge or a plate underneath your foot, something to create an artificial heel wedge for you. This is going to be more knee dominant, where the Patrick step up is more ankle dominant. It requires more ankle flexibility. And then the Peterson step up is where you create a natural heel elevation by raising your heel without a wedge underneath, but you are keeping the heel off of the ground throughout
like
it.
Isometric.
Yeah, a little bit more of like an isometric
Peterson's
in a sense, even though the heel still comes down at the completion of the rep, but you're intentionally going forward on it like that. And that one's more lower leg and foot dominant in there. So each one has its own purpose, but they're one of the shortest ranges of motion. You can get somebody just to do a 1-inch bend of their knee with that. And like we have a girl, I mentor and have a great friend named Andrew who, was a young guy who wanted to be an ATG coach. And over the past 6 months, he's been able to become an ATG coach, trained out of the same gym that I'm out of. And we'd run a knee class once a month. We had a girl named Izzy come in, who she came to the class in a knee sleeve. And, we're running people through split squats and different things, and she can't do split squats yet. Like just bending her knee more than a couple inches really hurt. And so like, okay, cool, Izzy, just do step ups. The sled felt good. Stretch your calves. Oh, the back extension's okay. Like we can work your hamstring. Cool. Hey, that was great. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're good. If you want to hang out for the rest of the class and like just listen in, feel free to do it. But that's all you need for 4 weeks. She's been working with Andrew now for about a week or 2 in total. I see her at the gym for the first time because she comes in earlier than I do. There's no knee brace on her. She's able to move her legs so much better. Like the woman's confident. Like and she was really timid at first with it, and she's just feeling so much better from it. So I think a lot of it is a mindset piece for people. If you're willing for it to work, I really haven't seen anybody that it hasn't provided benefits for, as long as they stay consistent with it and regress it to the level that is appropriate for them.
I think that's one of Ben's best things that he ever did was when I tell people about this and they say they Google ATG, knees over toes, Ben Patrick, they're going to see Ben perform at this high level. And if I have somebody that's 65, they're going to, like I sent it to my dad and he's like, I can't do this. However, if you dig deeper, he's got his pregnant wife. He's got I assume that's his mother, the white-haired lady that he'll have. And he shows you how to regress all this stuff to where it's almost like he has something for everybody. And I think some training programs lack that. Is, if you can't do this, how do we get you there? And I think that he regresses it back to literally something I could train an 80-year-old to do, which I think is really cool. So I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a really huge fan of it. And I think what you're doing is great, because I think that there's a I forget what Corey called it, a knee-demic or whatever.
A knee-epidemic.
A knee-epidemic. where people just go, they think it's the reality, and they think it's, I've got to get the steroid injection. I've got to get the gel injection where they put basically fluid in there to create space. Mm-hmm. Or I'm eventually going to get a knee replacement. I think that sometimes people are fed this narrative, and it's not always true. And one other thing that I've noticed Ben is doing, and I've just noticed it recently, I'm sure he's done it for a while, is he's adding in the shoulder, he's adding in the back, and I think that's he's kind of got it head to toe, just treating every joint like how it's supposed to move. Let's play a little fun game. Whether I'm gonna give you two ATG exercises, and you got to pick which is your favorite.
Okay,
you ready?
Yeah. What's the context of the favoritism? Is it like for a specific?
I knew you were gonna ask that. Yeah. I'm just gonna go off of you feel like brings the most benefit.
Okay, like if you could only do one or the other.
You could only do one or the other.
General population.
Not
specific to knees.
Not specific to Olympic athlete or anything.
Yeah. Okay. Shoot.
All right. ATG split squat or a heel elevated squat.
Split squat.
Split squat.
Yeah.
Do you like that better because of the lengthening involved with it?
If we're talking about a regular person who might have athletic endeavors but is probably not serious about it, they are never going to enter into as big of a stretch as an ATG split squat unless they actively do it. And where they may enter into a ass to grass squat just by picking up their kid, getting underneath their car to put air in their tires. So the length, the strength in that long position, and then also the unilateral capabilities of the split squat, I think are something that can't be replicated outside of training. Yeah. And plus, you can squat in a million different ways.
I think that was the one thing, the ATG split squat, that really showed me, because the tibialis raises and all those kind of things are cool.
Yeah.
But I think the ATG split squat made my hip open up more than anything ever had. And the mobility plus strength that you get out of that, the lengthening and the strengthening, I think I would agree with you on that. How about walking backwards versus a backwards sled?
Oh, backwards sled.
Backwards sled.
Easy.
How long do you take? Is it pretty person dependent where you start on that, or do you always start on a backwards walk?
I always start backwards sled.
You always start backwards sled.
Oh man, I got great sleds in my gym. I get everybody on the sled. I don't care.
What's the protocol and weight on that?
So it may have changed as of recently. When I was going through, 2020, 2022, 2023, it was more of, hey, just get a pump in your quads. I think I read in an article at one point that half body weight was a good weight to build up to on extra load on the piece. So 180-pound man, 245-pound plates is good on that. But for most people, I would love to get them on the sled versus backwards walking. The only people who I would start on backwards walking is like, let's say you've just had a pretty big lower back injury, and it would be smarter to help you get a quad pump more upright and without bending first, because you need blood in your legs first to kind of lubricate your spine from being so inflamed. I would put somebody on a treadmill, have them walk backwards. If somebody's 70 years old and super stiff and never trained before, I might get them backwards walking. But it's really only massively acute injury that is very recent and there's still pretty significant inflammation of the spine or even of the knee. If somebody's coming in and they're like, hey, dude, my nervous system is zapped, my knee kind of hurts, I didn't sleep well, yeah, I'm going to put you on the backwards treadmill because that's way less intimidating than having to push the sled down and back for 200 meters. But 90% of the time, almost everybody, we just lighten the sled up to whatever level we need to. I would much rather have you sledding backwards than walking backwards.
Ben has an interesting point on that, where if you're doing most traditional exercises, whether it's a machine, whether it's a dumbbell, whether it's kettlebell, you are moving the weight. It is almost impossible to hurt yourself on a sled because if you can't do it, you can't do it. It's just not going to move, right? And that was one interesting point that I thought on that. Tibialis raise versus Patrick step. What'd you pick?
Are we talking tib bar? Or are we talking
tibialis raise?
So body weight?
Body weight on both.
Yeah. Body weight on both. I'd probably go Patrick step.
What's your explanation on
that? As somebody with a double knee surgeries, the step up family created more benefit for me than the body weight tib raise ever did.
Why do I get so bored with the tibialis raise?
Because it's a substitution for the real exercise, which is a tib bar.
Tib bar. So I've never done a tib bar, actually.
You should come down to my gym and use a tib bar.
Corey's gym's got one.
Out of tib bar and Patrick step, I would go tib bar.
Tib bar.
Yeah, tib bar and Poliquin, ooh, that's really close. But you didn't ask that question, so I won't give an answer.
We'll save that to your next one.
Yeah.
Here's a hard hitter.
Okay.
Nordic versus reverse hyper.
Nordic.
You were quick with that.
Yeah.
Quicker than I would have thought, seeing you on Instagram a month ago doing 300 pounds on a reverse hyper. Yeah,
that one got 2 million views.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Everyone was hating in the comments and saying how I'm stupid.
Really?
Oh, dude.
So I don't read the comments purposely because unless
it was on Facebook where it got 2 million views.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's an exercise people don't know about.
No.
So it looks. So I just did it the first time like a month ago.
Yeah.
I had Corey like run me through it.
Yeah.
Boy, is that challenging.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And two, I've never had a lower back fatiguing pump like that.
Oh really? Have you never done like the 45-degree back extension?
So I have, but I just feel like that was different.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, it is different. It's the force curve difference. It's the fact that one's hooked in by the arms, one's hooked in by the legs, and then the fact that that's hardest at the top, where the 45 degree is hardest in the middle.
So 100%. I think that the 45 degree just is challenging in a different way, different area. Feel that a little bit more like I'm talking paraspinals, lumbar spine.
Yeah.
Corey had me on there just with a 45-pound plate to start.
Yeah.
And he was like, he actually had me do an isometric first.
Yeah, just holding's great.
And I was like, kind of taxed me a little bit. And then he puts the 45-pound. He's like, all right,
kind of makes you have to pee a little bit too, and it pushes into your stomach.
Right. I was trying to figure out where to orient myself on it because it's a little bit just it's different.
Yeah.
But you would pick the Nordic over the reverse hyper.
Correct.
Why is that?
Well, I would say if it's a or situation there are very few exercises in the gym that accomplish knee flexion and the benefits that it brings. There's only two. There's hamstring curls and Nordic curls. Everything else is hip extension.
Yes.
And so in that situation, if I had to choose between the two of those, there's a million other different hamstring and glute exercises that would accomplish hip extension, like the back extension machine, the GHD machine, seated good mornings, Romanian deadlifts. All of those would accomplish that, where you only have hamstring curls and Nordics to accomplish knee flexion, which in my opinion is, if you're an athlete, you can really tell the difference between the speed and structural integrity of an athlete who is strong in knee flexion and not strong in knee flexion.
Have you seen Tyreek Hill do the Nordic?
Yeah, it's insane.
It's crazy. And then people wonder why he's so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's got incredible knee flexion. But yeah, I think that's kind of my goal for next year is to get more into that. I haven't really had access to, with the move and everything, I haven't had access to a way to scale that.
Yeah.
And Corey's gym has like a whole. Have you been up to Corey's gym at all?
Yeah, it's dope. Yeah. I haven't seen it since he remodeled it.
Oh, so you need to go up there.
With the whole like, I can't remember if it's industrious is the style of training that it is, but you know what I mean, where he's got the little pockets.
So it's interesting. So I'm a traditional CrossFit gym guy, to where it's like you walk in, you got the rigs, all the equipment surrounds it, you bring what you need to where you're at, or you go to it, etc. This kind of flips it on its head. They have 8 pods in there that basically have a rig. It has plates. I was going to say dumbbells. The dumbbells are back. It has plates. It has a rower. It has a bike. It has a assault runner, a flat bench, basically everything you need for probably 90% of the stuff. Too. Kettlebells are in the back.
Okay. He's got a huge assortment of kettlebells too. Does he still have that giant collection?
So I think he got rid of everything.
I think he did too, actually.
Fully rogue. Fully rogue. I'm like, I
Bougie.
I can't imagine what, I think.
Pinky out.
10 or 12 grand for like each one of these pods.
Yeah. Pretty expensive.
Have you ever done one of those assault runners?
Yeah, they're crazy.
Crazy, yeah. Those are just a different level of fitness to get on there and do one of those.
Yeah.
But anyways, Corey's got a back section there where it's all like basically an ATG section. If you didn't know what it was, you'd just be like, "Oh, this is just a random set of equipment."
This is the pod for the broken people.
But if you know what ATG, he's got the reverse hyper, he's got the Nordic bench, he's got a treadmill just like sitting in the middle. We were joking 2 weeks ago that it's a dead mill. He's like, it still works, I think, but nobody's using it forward, which is cool. So I named this podcast "What Can We Get Into?" because my wife always messes with me with this. I have these phases of life where I get into different things, right? Whether it be coffee, whether it be bourbon, whether it be chiropractic. Good news is the chiropractic one has been a long phase, and I think it'll be a steady phase. So I kind of dive in, and I really dive in. Like when I dove into the ATG thing, the guy that I worked with at the time, Dr. Todd Hosteller up in Kentucky, was like, "Man, I'm tired of hearing about this. Like, what is this?" And I was recommending it to like every patient. Somebody would be like, "I have knee pain." What? I got so excited. I had made this handout of like 5 things to do for ATG, etc. So anyways, when I get into something, and then kind of move on to something else.
Yeah.
So this podcast was derived around, I want to bring in people that are both in my circle and out of my circle, or just in that pocket of something I'm interested in. We talked a lot about training. We talked a lot about business ownership. What kind of things are you into right now outside of this?
Yeah, gardening.
Interesting.
Gardening has been really cool.
Did you just do another podcast for gardening, or you talk to somebody on social media with gardening?
I've been jamming on it a little bit. I've got a buddy of mine named Garrett who we did like a gardening challenge, teaching people how to start their first garden.
Interesting.
That was really fun. Gardening is cool. I've been playing on Friday nights with my buddy Minecraft. Yeah, bro.
So you're bringing the video game Patrick back into the world.
Yeah, dude. Moderation is healthy, and you might appreciate it if like you had certain movies you loved as a kid or like different pieces of it. You learned a lot of who you were from some of these art forms, right? Would be video games, movies, and I went through this phase where I was so anti all of that because like my Xbox broke, and that's how I started my health journey. Or my fitness journey. And I went through both extremes. And I think at the end of the day, it's just kind of fun to kick back with a buddy on a Friday night and go try to raid a nether fortress, and see what you can do there. So
definitely, I think balance is key, especially if you're so hyper-focused on growing a business or doing something in particular. I think that the balance will really sharpen you. I know that I'm sure when you first got into this, you were probably spending every waking hour trying to improve the app or get more clients or develop your programs, and you start to realize the more that you put into it, if you exceed that threshold, you're what you're getting out of it kind of almost tapers off or plateaus. I think that finding that healthy work really hard yet play, I don't know if you want to call it play, but play just as much to get your mind off of it. And that's another reason I started this podcast is it's kind of a creative outlet for me to kind of balance the really, really pinpoint thing that I do as a chiropractor to a little bit more fun, a little bit more excitement, a little bit more creative side of my brain. So you're into gardening, you're into Minecraft. What are things that you've been into in the past where you're like, kind of dove in.
Yeah, it consumed me.
Spent a lot of time on.
Had a crypto phase. I really enjoyed I really enjoyed steel maces for a while. If you've ever seen those or used those.
What is that?
It's a piece of equipment that you utilize to where it's originally from like Indian culture, and they would essentially have a giant stick with like cement that may weigh 20, 40 pounds.
Is that where they're like swinging it?
Yeah. Had a pretty big steel mace phase. Had a pretty big kettlebell phase.
Do you throw that into your workouts at all?
Yeah, we've got some.
Do you?
Yeah, they're good.
Oblique strength for that. Whew.
Yeah, more grip and shoulders than anything.
Really? I've never done one.
Yeah, again, you should come to the gym.
I need to. We've been trying to plan a workout for apparently 3 months. I was thinking it was closer to 1 or 2, but we've been trying to plan a workout for 3 months.
Yeah, we got tip bars and steel maces, man. We got a good time, and a reverse hyper.
Just don't throw 300 pounds on there. I would look like a fool. I probably wouldn't even be able to get it swinging.
You can get enough momentum in it, and it'll work out.
So you got a lot of hate on that.
Dude, so much hate. Well,
do you think it's just people not being educated on what it is? Or do you think it's like people thinking that you're actually doing something to try to hurt yourself?
It was twofold. Okay, number one, I was in an experiment where I chose 5 exercises where I did the same thing every day for 60 days straight. I actually chose 4 exercises, and the 5th one was variety.
For a self-experiment or a challenge, or what?
No, there's a guy named Dan John who is the guy who invented the goblet squat. For instance, for his credibility. He's 67 and been in the space for a long time, and he's got a program called Easy Strength, to where you choose 5 movements and you do them every day for 40 days, for 40 workouts straight. You can do 5 days a week, but 7 days a week works just as well, and the progress is a little bit faster. And you essentially never do more than 10 total reps of either exercise or of any of the exercises. So you can change your rep schemes and your load every day depending on how you feel. You might try 2 sets of 5, 1 set of 10, 3 sets of 3. You might do your first set 5, your second 3, your last one 2. You could do 5 sets of 2. You could do 6 sets of 1, because going beyond 6 singles, usually most people start to lose their effectiveness after that point. And so you just, however you want to do it, you modulate your weights and do what you want to. And so I chose overhead press, weighted chin-ups, reverse hyper, and ab wheel as my 4. And then
how did you land on these?
You choose, so he's got categories for it. So you get a push, pull.
I figured that was what it was.
Legs, but he says a hinge works best. He says for some reason squats don't work the best in the system. I'll be trialing this, in a few months when I do another round of it. So
was your hinge the reverse hyper?
Yeah, reverse hyper was my hinge movement, because my whole goal was to be able to do a freestanding handstand push-up from deficit parallettes. And so I got that like 10, 15 days into the program, because you need lower back strength. That, if you think of reverse hyper, what is it? It's lifting your legs in a handstand push-up. It's the same exact movement to be able to pull your legs and hold them up there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You kind of look at that and think it's all like tricep and just upper extremity strength.
But it's a lot of lower back and glutes to lock your legs in place like that.
Okay.
And then standing ab wheel, just because I've always wanted to get a standing ab wheel that looked really good. So essentially he says push, pull, legs, but hint, the best answer is a hinge in his version. Again, I'll test the quads in another round and see if that stands true. And then pick an anterior chain movement, so like a leg raise or an ab wheel, or easy ones here. And you just run the course. And the 5th movement, variety, so like loaded carries, like sled, farmer's walks, or like med ball plyometrics, so like a clean and overhead throw, or like a throw against the wall, like a lateral toss, something to kind of spice in more of those cross patterns and carries. But it was great. And like my overhead press went up by 35 pounds in 6 weeks. I overhead pressed 185. I did weighted chin-ups like 90 pounds for 5 reps, which is insane. I think I did 70 for like 8. And by the end of it, and then my reverse hyper went from like 100 pounds for 10 to like 350 pounds for 10. And
how much are you increasing that when you increase it? Are you throwing just 45s on there each time?
It's undulating. So meaning I might have 3 days in a row where it's just not feeling it. And then I slept really good on one day, and so I'm going to work the weight on that day.
You're going to have that doing the same workout every single day.
Oh, yeah. You're probably in here in chiropractic, and you're like, man, every single adjustment just was phenomenal today. And then you have other days you're like, man, I kind of fell out of the groove. Like, it's like anything.
They call it the yips. You get in and you're like, man, it's just not, like I have to think about where my hand is versus it just going there. And
it's like no one took their fish oil today, and they're all just dry and crusty. Like they're not lubricated and moving well. And so, but going back to that, reverse hyper is one of my movements. And for the most part, I was doing 10 reps or 5 reps on that. So I'd do like 2 sets of 5 or 1 set of 10 every day. And I was just cranking up. And then I'm getting to the higher end and I'm like, I've been doing like 3 sets of 3, 5 sets of 2 on my like chin ups and overhead press. And that's been really working. No one's ever done low reps on a reverse hyper. And there's probably a critic who's like, yeah, because it's dumb, but I was just like, why not try it? And so that day I did 300 pounds for 3 reps. I did like set number 1 is 200. Set number 2 was 250. Top set was 3 reps. And I think just the ridiculousness of, and I film it and just put it up on and upload it, just kind of documenting. And I think the ridiculousness of seeing 300 pounds for 3 reps, like just drove people mad, because the next day I put up 350 pounds for 10 and posted it and it didn't get anywhere near as much feedback. I think it was a high weight for single reps just drove people crazy. They're like, you're breaking every rule.
So you think it's more the rep scheme versus people just looking at the reverse hyper going, like seeing you sling that much weight going, holy moly, like this is crazy? Yeah,
it was that and that. It was all of it. It was the fact that it's very aggressively swinging around that type of weight. And then the second piece is, why is this stupid person going for 3 reps with super heavy weight on an exercise that most people would do 10 to 20 reps on?
That's how Corey suggested it was 10 to 20.
Yeah, 10 to 20 is definitely the range for it. I was just trying it out with 3.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and that's what happens to get.
You're in an experiment doing another experiment.
Yeah.
Is what it is. I remember seeing that, and you were kind of, you were like, yeah, man, people didn't like this exercise. I didn't honestly know what this exercise was until probably 3 years ago. I had a patient go, I'm thinking about getting a reverse hyper for the basement. Should I? I'm thinking reverse hyper.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to break that down in my head, like on the spot, because I'm sure clients will like, should I do this? Da, 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 da. And you're like, I think I know what that is. But like, what does that mean? Yeah. Rogue makes one. So what do I do? Like every other smart doctor, you get on Google and you're like, well, what is a reverse hyper?
Yeah.
Look it up, and I'm like, so as a chiropractor, there's some camps, and I don't fit in this camp, that say that extension-based exercise is bad.
Yeah, the Stuart McGill kind of family.
So McGill actually, I don't know if McGill does not like extension.
I know he doesn't like rounded flexion.
So he may not like rounded flexion. I don't think he has as much to say about extension.
I guess he does do the McKenzie press.
McKenzie is all extension.
Yeah.
But if you look from a pathological perspective, or like a biomechanics perspective, if someone irritates a disc or has a nerve compression injury from a disc injury, extension closes down what's called the IVF, the intervertebral foramen. It's where the nerve exits. So if you extend into something that's already compressed or irritated, it's going to hurt. So from a chiropractic standpoint, a lot of things that we're taught is do not extend.
Yeah.
Probably the same reason that they teach you shouldn't, round, right?
Yeah.
And when I say teach you, I'm talking about these are the same professors that are teaching don't go knee over toe. So this is not my thought. This is how we're taught, basically. So where was I going with this? So basically, when this patient asked me this, my brain goes back to when I'm in school going, extension-based exercise. Some say it's good, some say it's bad. Weighted, have an acute back injury, I didn't give him like a strong answer on it, but this guy was like prepared to buy this thing for his basement. Would you do this on somebody that has not an acute back injury, but is recovering from some sort of lower back injury, whether it be a disc issue or anything? How long would you wait to go into like a reverse hyper with weight?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked how long, because my answer is going to be timelines. Timeline is what matters most here. I definitely would agree with you. Acute spinal pain and injury going into extension, I don't want to do that with somebody. I would rather do an isometric or a very short range like flexion and just see how it feels doing some of that. If you can handle lateral flexion, that's great, but that's like a next step. But initially just iso, short range, lumbar, spinal flexion. Then I would look into the reverse hyper. Like in my personal training programs, reverse hyper for somebody with acute lower back issues, not just like I'm tight in my lower back and it causes some stuff, but like, no, it's in the spine. because I think it's different if it's in the spine versus in the erectors.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like muscular versus skeletal is a conversation there. But for most people, like if somebody came into me with I've had lower back pain my whole life, we would spend 4 to 8 weeks split squatting, doing back extensions, QL raises or side bends, low cable pull-ins. We would look at seated good mornings first.
Low cable pull-in being a seated good morning with a cable?
No,
or is it,
low cable. Okay, imagine I've got a strap.
For hip flexion?
For hip flexion tied around my feet, and I'm driving it in with a cable weight. And so I like that one for just the core strength and the hip flexor strength.
I think a lot of people have weakness in the hip flexor. A lot of people have weakness in the lower core. And one thing that's interesting, and the reason I'm trying to do some reverse hyper myself is because I look at a lot of MRIs as a chiropractor.
Yeah.
There's one thing that radiologists never comment on an MRI. They always talk about the disc, the nerve, the stuff that either I'm treating or a neurosurgeon or pain management is going to treat. They never talk about the quality of the muscle. So you can see the erectors going down, basically right behind the spinal cord on a basically we call it a sagittal view.
Yeah.
It's the side of the spine. Muscle on a certain view of the MRI should look pretty dark black.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of fat in it. Mm-hmm. On a lot of people that have disc injuries or lower back pain, you'll see great quality of muscle and it'll suddenly vanish. There'll be a pocket of fat in there. And it's normally right behind where the disc issue is, where the nerve compression is. So a lot of patients like that, they have weakness there. So what I'm doing is creating the space, helping to heal that disc.
Yeah.
If they keep that pocket of fat in there, you're only as strong as the stability of the spine, right?
Yeah.
So if we do all this work here, decompressing this nerve, creating more space for the disc, helping to heal the disc, but they've got that pocket of weakness in there, it's probably going to come right back. Yeah. And I tell patients all the time, I'm like, if you keep this pocket of fat in there, you're going to be best friends with me for a long time and basically probably say, hey, this is the pendulum effect where I'm better and I'm worse, I'm better and I'm worse, because there's instability in there. So for me, I'm doing this to be preventative because I see a lot of patients that have this weakness in the lower back, not just from I'm testing them, it's clear as day on an MRI. Yeah. Clear as day. Muscle, 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 fat.
Yeah.
So we'll end there. This was awesome, Patrick. I love picking your brain. We have a lot of similar interests. And the more that I pick your brain, you really look at this from a diagnostic standpoint. You're not just a trainer of, all right, we're going to do some backs, some buys, some tries. Here's your push day, your pull day. You really analyze people. You're much more of a clinician than a trainer. I'm a strong believer in that.
I appreciate
Thanks for
that.
coming. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the Patrick Bell on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. You can find me on there. I think Facebook might be my full name, which is James Patrick Bell. If you do the @ like facebook.com @ James Patrick Bell, but you can also just look up Patrick Bell, and I'm pretty sure I'll pop up on there at some point.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, brother.
Do this again soon.
Absolutely.